everyone. Today a quick education and some user-uploaded reviews to rate your music regarding Pere Ubu's 1978 second album, Dub Housing. Dub Housing is the second album by American rock band Pere Ubu, released in 1978 by Chrysalis Records. The album is now regarded as one of their best, described by Trouser Press. Yeah, Trouser Press, that's an American magazine that was reviewing kind of British music at that time, as simply one of the most important post-punk recordings. The title is an allusion to the visual echoes of blocks of identical row houses in Baltimore, presumably reminiscent of the echo and reverberation that characterize dub. Of course, dub is that Jamaican music genre, really powerful and highly influential form of music composition. Dub is also a reference to Jehovah's Witnesses, who refer to themselves as dubs. Lead singer David Thomas was a Jehovah's Witness. Like at this time still? Whatever. On a 1979 concert bootleg recording, during the song Sentimental Journey, David Thomas ad-libs the line, "I live in a dub house." The photograph on the cover shows the apartment building at 3206 Prospect Avenue near downtown Cleveland, in which members of the band lived when this album was recorded. How delightful. At the end of 1978, NME named Dub Housing the year's 8th best album, while Sounds ranked it at number 13 on its year-end list. Robert Christgau of The Village Voice wrote in 1979, "Not only is it abrasive and visionary and eccentric and hard-rocking itself, but it sent me back to the modern dance, which I liked fine originally and like more now." I like how he admits that, like, it takes, like, sea change and other people liking it for him to like something. What a hack fraud. In The Village Voice's Paz and Job Critics poll for 1979, Dub Housing placed at number 9. The album has been reissued several times, 89 on CD, 99 on CD, 2008 on CD, and 2015 on CD, and vinyl, because that's what was going on at that time. People wanted, like... I don't really get vinyl reissue / remaster, unless it's, like, the original mix. I don't really get, like, why you would want to pay for, like, a vinyl reissue. I mean, I understood the appeal of vinyl was you wanted the original mix without any of the remastering. You know what I mean? You know, it's like, oh, I found any of the people touching up on it who weren't there in the original recordings. You know, like that's why I thought the appeal of getting vinyl copies was. If it was just a remaster on vinyl, like, what's the point? I think you can only push the whole warm sound thing so much. I think. I mean, CDs are underrated. People were playing CDs in their vinyl setups, and so CDs got a bad rep for years. Plus, CDs were indicative, encapsulative. I don't think encapsulative is a word, but I've used it several times in this channel. The CDs really were indicative of that moment where, you know, bad remasters. But those days are long gone, apparently. Anyway, let's move on to some reviews of this great album, Dub Housing, and we'll go chronologically. I'd like to see what people who were willing to go on the internet in the 2000s, so real hobbyists essentially, and publish a review and rate your music, create an account, what did they have to say? More, MOR, January 4th, 2004. I was in year 2 at that time. It was inevitable that 60s icons Charlie Brown and the Peanuts kids would begin experimenting with drugs, and premarital sex, and tinkering with engines and electrical machines of all manner. Some accidents took place, and some resulting injuries required trips to the emergency room, and Planned Parenthood, and gradually their cuteness and wild-eyed enthusiasm would sadly devolve into practicality and wisdom. That's all no less surprising than their creation of the rock group Pere Ubu, wherein all their hopes and dreams are finally realized. This record is more than 15 minutes long, and in it you can share in the coming of age of a generation and perhaps shed just a few tears of joy. Or you can float around the room frothing at the mouth, whichever feels more natural to you. From Chicken 46, July 25th, 2005. This is the Pere Ubu album I've heard most in my life, so I guess it shouldn't be a surprise that it is my favourite, and I tend to think it is their best. To me, everything here works better than on the debut. The debut is great, but this band is more assured, and perhaps more importantly, with the exception of the filler track, much catchier and just more fun. I can listen to this over and over and over again. As an aside, why is this post-punk? Punk barely existed when Pere Ubu formed. Sure, they evolved out of a punk band nobody heard, but how can their music be considered post-punk if punk barely existed in the US when they first began recording? That's an excellent query, actually. I'm not an expert, I can't answer that, but from my own perspective at least, it's because Pere Ubu sound like the British bands who were, you know, coming after their wave of punk rock over in London, or, you know, across the nation, I suppose, but based around London, and the Sex Pistols really popularised it, obviously. And so the fact that Pere Ubu happened to sound like groups like Magazine, or The Sound, or Susie and the Banshees, or Joy Division, or whomever you want to name at times, I think this had a lot to do with why Pere Ubu were considered a post-punk act. Plus, like, the album covers looked like they could have been from The Sound or, you know, the band, you know, early Cure, Gang of Four, pop group, or maybe not quite. They have very specific aesthetics, some of those groups, and like continuity with their album art. But Pere Ubu's did come across, like, if you didn't know any, if you saw the Modern Dance, you would assume, and so I was 78, you would assume it was just some British post-punk act. You know, it's old debut in the same year as Pill's first issue, Susie and the Banshees to Scream, Wise Chairs Missing, and what's the other one I forget, Magazine's Real Life, you know. That's why they're considered a post-punk band, more than anything. It's a bit superficial, but I think that's the best I've got from my perspective. Anyway. Oh, how long? Let's read Trout Mask on May 13th, 2006. That's a good sign. If they hadn't released the Modern Dance, Dub Housing would easily stand as Pere Ubu's masterpiece. As it is, the albums are both in my top 5 of 1978 because they are that good, but despite the horrible waste of space by his sentimental journey, Modern Dance manages to edge out Dub Housing, whose low point is the still at least mildly interesting Thriller. Why, here's a little exercise for you Ubu fans out there, or anyone with copies of Modern Dance and Dub Housing on hand. I love how that person isn't necessarily a Pere Ubu fan, or, you know, a true fan. He's probably not implying that necessarily, but maybe. Music people are fucking, like, the absolute worst. Like, I mean, music people compared to film people are scum, I'm just saying. Yeah, you know it. You know it. The fact that you won't reply to this video and just like comment somewhere else, being like, "Oh, this guy's a jerk." It's like you don't even have confrontation skills. Like that's why I hate music people. Film people will at least tell me I'm a fucking idiot. You know. Anyway, listen to the albums one after the other and draw parallels between songs on each. Each song on DH, Dub Housing, is a more analogous piece on Modern Dance, and more often than not, Dub Housing falls short. The most obvious pair, to my ears at least, YMV, is Laughing and Dub Housing, both haunting mood pieces featuring unhinged saxophone. Dub Housing is a great song, no argument for me there, but Laughing is an excellent one. This goes for other pairings as well. Navvy is an excellent poppy song, but it's no non-alignment pact. I'm going to skip over this mostly, to be honest. Basically, Dub Housing would be any other post-punk band whose name isn't The Fall's Masterpiece. What's The Fall's Masterpiece? There's Fall have lots of albums. You can't just assume I know what that is. Too bad Pere Ubu didn't let one of them have it and stuck themselves with two masterpieces whose brilliance they'd never achieve again. Hey, that third album's amazing. Trout Mask, I'm going to say this. Your Name ought to have been Lick My Decals. That's a better album. Or Safe as Milk. Trout Mask is great, but there's better stuff. You people just like, oh, I'm so weird. Look at me praising Trout Mask. It's just like, I don't think you're that weird. That's a lot of people like that album. Matt Groening likes that album. That's like the biggest show in the world he did. Babtok 77. Let's just try and compose a normal review for once. August 2006, August 18th. This one stands the test of time and will continue to for many years to come. There's enough experimentation going on here to inspire thousands of like-minded individuals to form bands and create new sounds. That's what this album does so effortlessly. It disregards all rock and roll norms and standards and sets out to obliterate your senses with waves of strange keyboard, bleeps and bloops, catchy guitar riffs, and a raging madman on the mic, spewing forth data as the lyrics that are quite funny as well as engaging. And the rhythm section is quite badass. I must warn you though, it's not for the uninitiated, and the best thing to do if you've never heard this band is to pick up the Modern Dance first. This one is just a tad more difficult, but better after repeated listenings. Excuse me. I have to admit, I'm not, as I did this in a previous video, I'm kind of mixed on the whole, oh, you gotta start here, oh, be careful what you do. It's like, stop trying to make it out like you need to be like a special attuned individual in order to appreciate this shit. Like, I like this music. I'm just some guy, right? And so are you. Like grow up, you know. Anyway. Here we go. Grim Stuff, August 13th, 2007. There is a way to use experimental elements in perfectly listenable songs. This album is a good example of that. It's also an example of horribly unlistenable experimentation, touted as challenging among the elitists, I'm sure, but a complete waste of listening time for the rest of us. I agree about Pere Ubu's fourth album. I don't think that's true of this album by any means. You have not heard the fourth album, if that's how you feel about this album. I'm going to read this. I agree somewhat in principle with what he's going to say next, although I don't like the whole, follow the rules, I know the rules and you don't. It's like, where's your album, dude? Yeah, right, you're a hack. There's a universal and unavoidable rule among all artistic expressions. Before you turn the world upside down, you have to know what the hell you're doing first. Not necessarily, really. If your art is truth, there will be no room for pretense. In this sense, I consider Dub Housing a success. However, the tracks, I Will Wait and Drinking Wine should have been left out of the recording room. And it's a good thing you weren't there, Grim Stuff. Okay, hopefully you're not publishing reviews anymore. If I ever see your name again when I'm doing this, I'm not going to read out what you have to say, because I thought that was crap. I wasted my time. And we'll read one more. Will we? Yeah, we will actually. Aunt Jemima, March 25th, 2008. David Thomas and Pere Ubu leave the sprawling experimental guitar pop found in the modern dance for a more refined post-punk sound of experimentation to much higher premium on dub housing. However, it retains all that is great about the songwriting and lyrics of the Crocus behemoth, though with decidedly more listens to be had to finally soak in this music for all it's worth. For fans of the last album sound, like myself, there is still great melodic rock tracks like On the Surface, Caligari's Mirror, and I Will Wait. Each track has its own great meaning and purpose, which makes it more unique from their debut effort with its arbitrary tracks, Life Stinks and Over My Head. It is much less accessible, but it still gives us as much satisfaction in listening. Give this one a few spins before you make your final decision on its fate in your music collection, for it is a classic and a favourite for music geeks everywhere. That term accessible, that's an interesting one. Like, I get it on the one hand, but also it's here's the thing. If I think something interesting is going on with an album and it's not necessarily like gripping me, like, look, it's pretty obvious when like thought and consideration has gone into something. You can think it's like it can all be thrown out the window because it's all just Emperor's New Clothes after a while, you know, and you need to be sure you're not praising something, you know, some naked emperor or whatever. But like, isn't it clearly not? Don't you think that if it was just nonsense, like people would have, like, this would have been like laughed out of the discourse like it was Metal Machine music or something? Think about it. Or not. Maybe that's the problem. Just listen to dub housing. See how it goes. Like it's just music. I mean, you either enjoy it or you don't. And there's no right or wrong answer. Unless you want to say that they like broke rules, in which case, yeah, I think that's a little bit wrong, to be perfectly honest. But hey, just don't be an annoying, bloated fascist about it, and we'll be fine, right? That's what I think. Anyway, thanks again, my friends. Appreciate it immensely.